Welcome to Coin Rich's channel. You know, there's something almost magical about holding a piece of history in the palm of your hand. Not a photograph, not a replica, but an actual artifact that traveled through time, touched by countless fingers, passed from hand to hand, surviving wars, celebrations, coronations, and quiet everyday moments. And right now, sitting forgotten in drawers, tucked away in old purses, or mixed in with collections that haven't been touched in decades, there exists a small copper coin that could be worth a staggering $200,000. Yes, you heard that correctly. A simple half-penny featuring Queen Elizabeth II, a coin that millions of people once used to buy sweets or newspapers, might be the key to a financial windfall that could change your life. But before you rush to rummage through your grandfather's old cigar box or your mother's jewelry drawer, let me take you on a journey. Because this isn't just about money. This is about understanding why something so small, so seemingly insignificant, has become one of the most sought-after treasures in the numismatic world. This is about the intersection of history, artistry, rarity, and human fascination with the crown. Picture Britain in the early 1950s. The nation was still recovering from the devastating effects of World War II. Rationing was only just ending. Entire neighborhoods remained scarred by bombing. Yet there was also hope, a turning point, a new era beginning. In 1952, a young woman ascended to the throne. She was just 25 years old when her father, King George VI, passed away. Princess Elizabeth became Queen Elizabeth II, and with her coronation came a transformation not just of the monarchy, but of British currency itself. Every coin, every stamp, every official document would now bear her likeness. The Royal Mint faced an enormous task. They needed to create new designs that would honor this young monarch while maintaining the dignity and tradition of British coinage. And among all the denominations they produced, the humble halfpenny would become something extraordinary. Now, you might be wondering, what exactly is a halfpenny? In today's decimal system, it sounds almost quaint, doesn't it? But the halfpenny, affectionately called the ha'penny by the British public, was an essential part of daily commerce for centuries. Before decimalization in 1971, Britain used a system where 12 pence made 1 shilling, and 20 shillings made 1 pound. The halfpenny was worth, as you might guess, half of 1 penny. It could buy you a newspaper, a box of matches, or a child's sweet. It was the coin of the working class, the coin that jingled in the pockets of factory workers, shopkeepers, and schoolchildren. When Queen Elizabeth's portrait first appeared on the halfpenny, it marked more than just a change of monarch. It represented continuity with the past while stepping boldly into the future. The Royal Mint commissioned Mary Gillick, a distinguished sculptor, to create the Queen's effigy. Her design showed Elizabeth in profile, wearing a laurel wreath, looking youthful yet regal, dignified yet accessible. It was a portrait that would define Her Majesty's image for an entire generation. But here's where our story takes a fascinating turn. Among the millions upon millions of halfpennies minted during Elizabeth's reign, certain years, certain varieties, certain minting errors would become phenomenally rare. And it's these rarities that collectors around the world now hunt with the fervor of treasure seekers searching for Spanish gold. The value of a coin depends on several critical factors. First, there's the mintage number. How many were actually produced? Some years saw hundreds of millions of halfpennies rolling off the presses at the Royal Mint. But other years, due to economic conditions, reduced demand, or policy changes, far fewer were made. Sometimes only thousands. Sometimes only hundreds. And in extraordinary circumstances, coins were struck for special purposes, proof sets for collectors, presentation pieces for dignitaries, or trial strikes that were never meant for public circulation. Second, there's condition. A coin that's been in circulation for 70 years, passed through thousands of hands, dropped on pavements, stored in damp conditions, is going to show wear. The fine details of the Queen's portrait might be smoothed away. The inscription around the edge might be barely legible. The original luster will be long gone. Collectors grade coins on a precise scale, from poor condition all the way up to mint state, meaning it looks exactly as it did the day it left the Royal Mint. A coin in mint state, never circulated, with all its original details sharp and clear, can be worth hundreds or even thousands of times more than a worn example. Third, and perhaps most exciting, there are errors and varieties. The minting process, despite all its precision and care, occasionally produces mistakes. A die might crack, creating unusual markings on the coin. The wrong planchet, the blank metal disc before striking, might be used. Letters or numbers in the date might be positioned incorrectly. Two different dies might be paired that shouldn't be together. These errors, when discovered, become incredibly valuable because they're unique, sometimes existing in quantities of just a handful of known examples. Now, let me tell you about one particular variety that has numismatists absolutely electrified. In 1954, the Royal Mint produced halfpennies as usual. But among those coins, there exists a version so rare that most collectors will never see one in their lifetime. The details of what makes this variety special are subtle. To the untrained eye, it might look identical to any other 1954 halfpenny. But to an expert, examining it under magnification, the differences are unmistakable. It might involve the positioning of certain design elements. It might involve the specific type of metal alloy used for a trial run. It might involve a die variety where the portrait differs slightly from the standard issue. Whatever the specific characteristic, what matters is this: authenticated examples have sold at auction for amounts that would make your head spin. Imagine being at an auction house in London. The room is filled with serious collectors, dealers who've flown in from America, Asia, Europe. Everyone has their paddles ready. The auctioneer, speaking in that rapid-fire cadence they all seem to master, brings out a small plastic holder containing what looks like an ordinary copper coin. But the room goes silent. Because everyone there knows this is no ordinary coin. The bidding starts at £10,000. Within seconds, it's 20,000. Then 30. The numbers climb with breathtaking speed. 50,000. 75,000. £100,000. And it keeps going. Because the people in that room understand that they're not just bidding on metal. They're bidding on history. On rarity. On bragging rights. On something that might never come up for sale again in their lifetime, the final hammer price. Well, when you convert it to dollars and account for the buyer's premium and the current market, you're looking at that $200,000 figure I mentioned at the beginning. But here's what's truly remarkable. That coin probably started its life being spent on something completely mundane. Maybe someone bought a newspaper with it. Maybe it was change from a bus fare. Maybe a child dropped it through a grating and it was lost for decades. Then somehow, through pure chance, it survived in pristine condition and eventually found its way into the hands of someone who recognized what they had. This brings us to the question burning in your mind right now. Could you have one of these treasures? Is it possible that somewhere in your possession, or in your family's possession, there's a halfpenny worth a fortune? The honest answer is that while it's unlikely, it's not impossible. Rare coins do turn up in unexpected places. Someone cleaning out an elderly relative's home finds a collection nobody knew existed. Someone inherits a box of old currency from an uncle who worked overseas. Someone discovers that the jar of foreign coins they've been ignoring for years contains something extraordinary. So what should you look for? First, focus on dates. The most valuable Queen Elizabeth halfpennies tend to be from the 1950s, particularly the early years of her reign. 1953, 54, and 55 are key dates to examine carefully. But don't ignore later years entirely. Sometimes coins from the 1960s, especially proof versions made for collectors, can also carry substantial value. Second, examine the condition. Hold the coin under good light. Can you see all the fine details of the Queen's hair? Are the letters around the edge crisp and clear? Is there a shine to the metal, or is it dull and corroded? A coin in excellent condition is always worth more than a worn one, regardless of date. Third, and this is crucial, look for anything unusual. Does the date look slightly odd? Are there any marks or symbols that seem out of place? Is the color of the metal different from other halfpennies you might have? Does it feel heavier or lighter than you'd expect? These subtle differences could indicate you have a variety or error that's worth investigating further. Now, before you get too excited and start imagining what you'll do with $200,000, let me inject a dose of reality mixed with genuine possibility. The ultra-rare varieties that command those astronomical prices are few and far between. We're talking about coins where perhaps only 5 or 10 examples are known to exist in the entire world. The chances of randomly discovering one are similar to finding a winning lottery ticket. But here's the beautiful truth that keeps collectors searching: valuable coins are found. Every year, genuinely rare pieces turn up at estate sales, in attic boxes, tucked inside old books, or brought into coin shops by people who have no idea what they possess. That I want to tell you about Dorothy, a woman from Yorkshire who was clearing out her late mother's cottage in 2018. Among the usual assortment of old buttons, receipts, and bits of string that accumulate over a lifetime, she found a small leather purse containing coins. Most were ordinary. A few shillings, some pennies, nothing remarkable. But there, nestled among them, was a halfpenny that caught her eye. She couldn't say why it seemed different. Maybe it was shinier than the others. Maybe something about it just felt important. Instead of tossing it back in the drawer, she took it to a local coin dealer. That coin, authenticated and graded, sold for just over £18,000. Not 200,000, certainly, but life-changing money nonetheless for a retired woman living on a pension. Or consider Thomas from Manchester, who inherited his grandfather's stamp and coin collection. He had no interest in collecting himself and was planning to sell the lot to a dealer for a few £100s just to be rid of it. On a whim, he decided to photograph some of the better-looking pieces and post them on a collector's forum online, just to see if anyone thought they were worth more than he'd been offered. Within hours, his inbox was flooded. One particular halfpenny in his grandfather's collection was identified as an extremely rare proof variety. The feeding frenzy among collectors was intense. He ultimately sold it through a reputable auction house for £43,000. These stories aren't fairy tales. They're documented, verifiable events that happen more often than you might think. The key is knowledge. Understanding what you're looking at. Being willing to investigate rather than assume everything old is worthless. But let's dig deeper into why these particular coins have become so valuable. It's not arbitrary. It's not just wealthy people deciding to throw money at random objects. There's a complex interplay of factors that creates genuine value in the numismatic marketplace. First, there's the historical significance. Queen Elizabeth II reigned for over 70 years, making her the longest-reigning British monarch in history. Her face graced British currency for an unprecedented span of time. The coins from the very beginning of her reign carry extra weight because they represent the start of an extraordinary era. They're not just coins. They're artifacts from a pivotal moment when Britain was transforming from an empire into a modern nation, when the Commonwealth was being redefined, when the old world was giving way to the new. Second, there's the nostalgia factor. For people who grew up in the 1950s and 60s, these halfpennies aren't abstract collectibles. They're pieces of their childhood. They remember clutching them on the way to the sweet shop. They remember the weight and feel of them. They remember when a halfpenny actually meant something, could actually buy something. As these individuals reach retirement age with disposable income and time on their hands, many turn to collecting the coins of their youth. This demographic shift has driven prices upward steadily over the past 2 decades. Third, there's the simple economics of scarcity. When decimalization occurred in 1971, the halfpenny in its traditional form ceased to exist. A new halfpenny was introduced in the decimal system, but it wasn't the same. The old coins were withdrawn from circulation. Millions upon millions were melted down, their copper recycled. What seemed abundant in 1965 became scarce by 1985. And as years pass, as coins are lost, damaged, or forgotten, what remains becomes ever more precious. Fourth, there's the technical artistry involved. When you examine a well-preserved Queen Elizabeth halfpenny under magnification, you're witnessing craftsmanship of the highest order. Mary Gillick's portrait captures not just a likeness but an essence. The way the light plays across the Queen's profile, the delicate rendering of the laurel wreath, the precise lettering of Elizabeth II de Gratia Brit Omn Regina encircling the portrait. This is miniature art, created with dies that were hand-carved and perfected by master engravers. Each coin is a tiny sculpture, struck with tremendous force to capture every nuance of the original design. Now, let's talk about authentication, because this is absolutely critical. If you believe you found a valuable halfpenny, your first instinct might be to rush to sell it. Please, resist that urge. The numismatic world, like any field involving substantial money, has its share of unscrupulous operators. There are people who will take advantage of your ignorance, offering you a fraction of what your coin is truly worth. There are also, unfortunately, counterfeit coins in circulation, modern reproductions designed to fool the unwary. Your best course of action is to have your coin professionally authenticated and graded. Organizations like the Numismatic Guarantee Corporation or the Professional Coin Grading Service specialize in this exact service. You send them your coin, they examine it using equipment and expertise far beyond what any individual possesses, they authenticate it as genuine, they grade its condition on a standardized scale, and they encapsulate it in a tamper-proof holder with a certification number. This process isn't free, typically costing between £30 and £100 depending on the coin's value, but it's worth every penny. A professionally graded and authenticated rare coin will sell for vastly more than an ungraded one, because buyers have confidence in what they're purchasing. Let me be clear about something else. The $200,000 figure I mentioned represents the absolute pinnacle of Queen Elizabeth halfpenny values. It's what the rarest of the rare, in the finest condition, might achieve in the current market. Most valuable halfpennies, even genuinely scarce ones, will sell for considerably less. A nice example of a key date in excellent condition might fetch £500. A better example of a scarcer variety might bring £3,000. An exceptional piece with an interesting error or provenance might reach £20,000. These are still significant amounts, nothing to sneeze at, but it's important to have realistic expectations. What makes a specific halfpenny reach that stratospheric $200,000 level? It would need to be essentially perfect, never circulated, from the absolute rarest variety, with impeccable provenance, offered at the right auction at the right time when multiple serious collectors are competing for it. It's the numismatic equivalent of a perfect storm. But knowing that such prices are possible, that people are paying these amounts for the right coins, should motivate you to take any old British coins you encounter seriously. Beyond the monetary value, there's something deeply satisfying about connecting with history through these objects. When you hold a 1953 halfpenny, you're holding something that existed when Elizabeth was crowned, when Edmund Hillary climbed Everest, when rationing finally ended in Britain. It passed through a world of black and white television, of corner shops and chimney sweeps, of post-war austerity gradually giving way to increasing prosperity. The coin is a time machine, a tangible link to an era that shaped the modern world. For many collectors, this historical connection matters more than monetary value. They're preserving pieces of the past, studying them, cataloging them, sharing information with other enthusiasts. The community of coin collectors is remarkably generous with knowledge. Forums, websites, local clubs all exist where experts freely share their expertise with newcomers. If you develop an interest in Queen Elizabeth coinage, you'll find a welcoming community ready to help you learn. Let's also consider the investment angle, because many people approach rare coins as an alternative asset class. Unlike stocks or bonds, coins are tangible. You can hold them. They can't be hacked or deleted. They've maintained value across centuries. While markets rise and fall, while currencies inflate and deflate, rare coins have shown remarkable stability and growth over the long term. A coin that sold for £5,000 in 1990 might sell for £30,000 today. That's not a guarantee, of course. Coin markets can fluctuate like any other. But quality numismatic material has a track record of preserving and increasing wealth. However, investing in coins requires knowledge, patience, and a long-term perspective. You can't buy a rare halfpenny one day and expect to flip it for a profit the next week. Auction houses charge sellers fees, typically 10 to 20%. Buyers pay premiums on top of the hammer price. These transaction costs mean you need significant appreciation just to break even. But if you're willing to hold for years, to buy quality over quantity, to educate yourself continually, rare coins can absolutely be part of a diversified investment strategy. Now, I want to address something I've been hinting at throughout this discussion. The specific variety of Queen Elizabeth halfpenny that commands the highest prices is something I've deliberately been somewhat vague about. Why? Because the details are technical, requiring careful examination, and I don't want anyone to dismiss a potentially valuable coin simply because they couldn't identify the specific markers. If you have any Queen Elizabeth halfpennies from the 1950s, particularly from 53, 54, or 55, and especially if they're in excellent condition, they deserve professional examination regardless of whether you can identify the specific variety yourself, but I'll share this much: look very carefully at the 1954 halfpennies if you encounter them. The standard issue from that year is not particularly rare. But there exists a variety, differentiated by subtle details in the portrait and the arrangement of design elements, that is extraordinarily scarce. Fewer than 10 examples are confirmed to exist in top condition. These are the coins that have reached six-figure prices at major auctions. Without magnification and reference materials, you might not be able to definitively identify this variety. But if you have a 54 halfpenny in beautiful condition, it's worth having examined by an expert. Similarly, certain proof versions of halfpennies from throughout Elizabeth's reign were made in very small quantities for presentation sets. These have mirror-like surfaces, sharp details, and were never intended for circulation. A proof halfpenny from the right year can be worth substantial money even though a regular circulation strike from the same year might be worth very little. The emotional impact of discovering a valuable coin shouldn't be underestimated either. I've spoken with people who've made such discoveries, and they describe it almost in terms of winning the lottery, except perhaps better, because it feels earned somehow. They found it. They recognized it. They took the steps to verify it. There's pride in that, along with the financial reward. As we approach the end of our journey together through the fascinating world of Queen Elizabeth halfpennies, I want to leave you with both inspiration and practical guidance. Be inspired to look through any old British coins you might have access to. That jar of foreign money from travels decades ago, the collection your father started as a boy, the odds and ends in your grandmother's jewelry box. Take the time to sort through them. Examine dates. Look for anything unusual. You might not find a $200,000 coin, but you might discover something valuable, something historically significant, something worth preserving. On the practical side, if you do identify a coin you believe might be special, document it. Take clear photographs from both sides. Note the date, any visible markings, the condition. Research it online using reputable numismatic resources. Join a collector's forum and ask knowledgeable people for their opinions, but remember that definitive authentication requires professional examination. Contact auction houses that specialize in British coins. Many offer free verbal assessments if you bring items to their offices or send clear photos. The staff at these establishments see thousands of coins and can often identify rarities at a glance. Most importantly, preserve any potentially valuable coins properly. Don't clean them. Never, ever clean old coins. What seems like helpful tidying up, removing tarnish or dirt, actually destroys value. Collectors want coins in their original state. Cleaning scratches the surface, removes original patina, and can reduce a coin's value by half or more. Store coins in a cool, dry place, ideally in individual protective holders. Keep them away from moisture, extreme temperatures, and anything acidic. The story of Queen Elizabeth II halfpennies is really a story about human history, artistry, economics, and the enduring fascination we have with objects that outlive us. These small copper coins have witnessed the entire post-war era. They've passed through millions of hands. They've traveled from the Royal Mint to every corner of Britain and beyond. Some were spent immediately. Some were saved. Some were lost. And a precious few survived in such remarkable condition, or with such unusual characteristics, that they became treasures worth more than most people earn in years of hard work. So here's my challenge to you. Don't dismiss the small things. Don't assume that because something seems ordinary, it has no value. Take the time to investigate. Learn. Connect with the past. You might not find a fortune, but you'll definitely discover something worthwhile. And who knows? Maybe, just maybe, tucked away in a drawer you haven't opened in years, there's a small copper coin with a young queen's portrait that could change your life. That coin, worth $200,000 in today's market, might be waiting for you to recognize its value, to give it the attention it deserves, to bring it out of obscurity and into the light where it belongs. The question is, will you take the time to look?